This is going to be a return to form of slight sort, kind of. It's 0720. I woke up at 0300 because somebody didn't take that one drug they're supposed to take. So I may or may not be a little spicy, maybe not. I'll try not to be too loud because Il is still kind of asleep, sort of. So, but anyways, I want to talk about this. This is a couple of the things involving the collapse of the Bronze Age. Now, I've studied quite a bit on this in the past, and everything I found out kind of all paints a series of pictures. From this, the Bronze Age collapse circa 1250 to 1150 BC. A certain religion we've all heard the name of that we're not allowed to criticize came out around this time, for the record. And you have these different invasions. The Dorians invaded Greece, all these different regions. Troy was sacked, but when didn't that happen? Let's be real. The unsackable city got sacked fucking 4 times. The Thracians invaded what is now the Middle East, sacking a bunch of things in their wake. In the meanwhile, the Sea Peoples, who just spawned out of thin fucking air, wrote nothing down, said nothing, and left, invaded all sorts of ports in the Mediterranean. I believe their locale was an island, not Sicily, but in that region, if I remember correctly. Because they found a lot of bronze and copper statues and artifices, and dare I say fetish, which is the old term of that word. They found a lot of that on this island that had massive copper mines that still had copper in it to this day, and still had tin. They basically had their own bronze industrial complex on this fucking island. So, hence why we think that was the island of the Sea People. Because they were heavily armored, and cocked, locked, and ready to rock. And so they invaded, sacked a bunch of shit. Now, according to this, they say cities that have survived the collapse is blue. Cities that were sacked, just because you were sacked doesn't mean you didn't survive the collapse. Being sacked doesn't necessarily spell the end of your entire history. Getting a city sacked usually just meant, you overthrow the regime and burn a couple temples, loot some shit, say nothing, and leave. And boy, did the Sea Peoples do that in droves. Now, I'm going to get into full connecting the dots mode in a minute, but I want to go over this map a little bit. Babylon survived, but I don't know if Babylon is still a thing. I don't think. I don't know. That I'm actually not certain. Again, I'm more an old history guy than I am a, hey, this is the modern day kind of guy. I would rather learn stories about our forebears and what the fuck some degenerate pervert is doing in Appalachia. Sorry, Alaska. I care about Appalachia because that's my home, but, well, it's my origin, but I don't care too much for anywhere the fuck else, so I'll just shit on those places instead. But anyways, so all these get sacked. Mycenaean culture era, Hittite Empire, Egyptian New Kingdom, and the Assyrians. The only one that really survived out of those 4 was Greece and Egypt. And only parts of Egypt. They actually don't mention as much the places that were sacked, because there were more places sacked more down by the south end of that little peninsula. I see people just went up in there, rocked their shit, said nothing, and left. So that all happened. And the Assyrian Empire fucking collapsed. The Hittite Empire completely collapsed. Greece and north of this map, because the Nords had their own Bronze Age that lasted even longer, actually. Their Bronze Age didn't end until about the 630s, 650s. And in the 800s, early 800s, the Nordlands were heavily entrenched in their Iron Age to such a point where they were gestalting everything that wasn't nailed down, establishing trade routes with what was left, and sacking, pillaging, and being the best damn warriors on the planet at the time. Keep in mind, in the Dark Age, everyone was a Vandal who sacked nations and empires. Everyone was sacking and pillaging. The only difference was the Nords were good at it. And they actually had an honor code, and they actually believed in things like not cheating on your spouse or having concubines, which is another myth that I will go into in another video. I need to do a video where I go into all the myths about the Norse. Because Christian propagandists were a thing back in the day. Most people don't seem to know that. When it came to propaganda, those who were writing shit down usually made better propaganda than those who were just spreading it by mouth. And the Nords didn't write a whole lot down unless it was like, hey, commemorate a new longhouse, let's carve in some stone here. And there are parts of the Nordlands that pagans and Christians were closest of allies. And there were parts where they were bitter enemies. Although most of the discrimination, if we dare call it, was from the monotheist to the polytheist. As it usually is in the modern day. Fun fact. But that's aside. The Bronze Age collapse happened again this time. Now I want to point out the pole shift caused by the passing of Planet X every 3,600 years caused the climate change and social upheaval. Now I'm glad someone mentioned the social upheaval because a lot of that was going on. Again, a new religion, a new idea of religion came out at this time. And that's monotheism, which started with the Judaism. It started with that religion in particular. That was the first of the monotheists to become a thing, at least in the Middle East, which was later known for its monotheism, because 3 major tribes all ushered out in that area, all being monotheistic and all worshipping the same deity, just with different names. Fun fact, the deity Yahweh had a lot of different names in different tribes. The Canaanites knew him as one thing, the Hittites knew him as another, the Nazarites, yes, very similar to the word Nazi, as is Ashkenazi. Kind of makes you wonder if that was, genuine or not. But that's neither here nor there. Again, around this time, multiple things were happening. One, the pole shifts were kicking in, so the climate was fucked up. 2, everyone decided to invade because the climate was fucked up. And 3, coincidentally at the same time, religious upheavals were happening in and of themselves because monotheism started to take root. And it started to take root in the Middle Eastern regions, specifically. And in these regions that were very worship the father, prowess of the man kind of religions, all became the mother's bloodline is the most important, worship the mother, fuck the father, we don't need a dad religions. And when that change happened in a lot of the empires that are no longer there, when those changes happened, a lot of people were pissed and they stopped working and thus crashed their economy because people said, fuck it, I'm out. Because they were so offended they couldn't even. And so many of them were offended that they couldn't even, that they decided to basically let the entire economy collapse while revolting in the temples. Because the temples was where everyone was seeing this debaucherous weirdness that was going against their very code and religion and ethics and all this other stuff. Because religion isn't just what Sky Daddy you practice, it's also your moral code, your connection to morality. It's also your connection to logic in many ways. Hard to think now that atheism YouTube was a thing, then died, then was resurrected, then died again. But, you know, historically, people used science with religion up until monotheism became a thing, in which case all of a sudden we wanted to inhibit scientific progress as much as possible. Now, the Greeks, with their polytheistic chatitude, decided to worship both science and religion simultaneously, that both things coexist, both things are connected, both things are one and the same. And they used their religion to explain the natural world, and they used the natural world to explain their religion. Which is something the Greeks did, the Nords did. Not so much, well, they did do that in the Middle East until monotheism. When monotheism kicked in, they wanted to halt scientific progress as much as possible because it threatened the oligarchy. Which is something we're still dealing with today, fun fact. Now, in the whole needing to change your religion aspect, okay, in that whole aspect, going from a balanced religion that worships both the male and the female to a, dare I say, feminist religion that only worships the female and shits on the male as much as possible, eventually the men are going to revolt. Eventually they're going to say, you don't appreciate my sacrifice, fuck you, I'm done, I'm leaving, I'm going to another country. Because that's what happened in the Bronze Age. Again, religion we're not allowed to criticize. Brought in the idea that your lineage by the father does not matter. Your lineage by the mother matters. Your mother, if your mother is of the chosen faith, then you are also of that blood, because faith and blood are somehow the same, I guess, when it counts to us, I guess. I don't know how, but here we are. Again, I have to talk about this without talking about this because, you know, people control certain things that you're not allowed to question, but it is important to learn your history, even if it's verboten, and especially if it pisses off the right people. Now, again, all these things happen at the same time. Invasion, climate shift, a dramatic climate shift, natural dramatic climate shift. They didn't have fucking steam engines and coal manufacturers and oil refineries in the Bronze Age. They didn't have that shit. They didn't have CO2 in the air, right? If they did, it was minuscule fucking amounts. Even more minuscule than what cows produce, which everyone thinks is going to kill us now because some not even Latina said so, who was probably told by her handlers, like most politicians are. Again, I wonder who those handlers are. I wonder. Again, not allowed to say it. That's how you know they are your master. But anyways, I think that was a Voltaire quote. Something about that. Anyways, I get on weird tangents for those who haven't noticed. Again, sorry, and also you're learning. Shut up. So, you know, all these things got sacked. All these things got destroyed. And the male sect of society, the laborers, because women weren't really in the workforce in the same way that men were in the Bronze Age, right? Women weren't, to quote a dictator, holding up half the sky, which they still not doing, but to quote a dictator. And again, you have the male sect of society, who is the industry, who is the movers and shakers, who are the politicians, who are the connected ones, the doctors, the ones doing the on the boots work of keeping a society running. We're told when monotheism kicked in, your sacrifice isn't valuable. And so men said, okay, then I'll go sacrifice somewhere else. Because it is in men's intrinsic nature to sacrifice. It is in our intrinsic bloodline to give to others. How often do you see a man stopping at the end of a road, like what's it called? Sidewalk? No. I guess interstate. How many times do you drive down the interstate, if you have such a thing, and see some random dude fixing a woman's tire to get her back on the road? He doesn't expect a blowjob out of it. He doesn't expect money. He does it because he wants to help. That is men's intrinsic nature. There's also men's intrinsic nature to be sacrificed. Now, that doesn't mean we should abuse it. Monotheism doesn't mean we should abuse men's sacrifice, like you've been wanting to do since day fucking 1250 BC. But instead, what you should do is value them for it, because it's inherent, it's intrinsic in men's genetic code to serve others and to love women. It is biologically programmed into us, and that's why we need to worship it. Okay? And of course, there's the occasional weirdo out in the corner who's like, oh, well, I've known this man who was X. Yes. Did he have a father? No. That explains some things. Because having a strong fatherly parental figure tends to make you less of a criminal, drug addict shitbag. In general. Again, broad strokes. And male guidance and male tutorship was something the Greeks borderline worshipped, right? And people thinks, what the hell am I, a goblin? Sorry, in bed with a goblin. But no, people think that the Greeks had a pederos, that would be the actual word, idea of tutorship, but that wasn't true. Because the adult men were not, quote, seducing, end quote, the boy, well, to them adults, to us it would be children. 13 to them was the adult age, right? Which makes sense when you're not expected to get past 30. Fun times. Although there's a shit ton of examples in the Bronze Age of people living to be 80 plus years old. That happened all the fucking time, but again, the average was, a lot of people died in childhood, a lot of people died in their 80s. Average that together, you get about 35, 40. But still. I think that's an aside? Anyways. But yeah, you have that tutorship program that the Greeks had. And it was... They would teach the to-be adult everything. A trade, statesmanship, duty, honor, even romance, even sex. But they would get a woman of that age, usually a love interest of the man of that age, usually, and they would teach, while the adult tutor? Is the tutor the adult? Or is that the child? I think that's the adult. As the adult tutor would demonstrate certain things in a more anatomical sense on a woman
his age, the to-be adults would demonstrate or would repeat the process on a to-be adult of his age. It wasn't 60-year-old man seducing 13-year-old, as we now call boy. It wasn't that, as much as people want it to be, because people want to think the Greeks were all homosexual, which they fucking weren't. Just, I'm so sick and tired of modern day groups demanding that the past cater their weird Faustian fuck fantasies. I'm sick and tired of that shit. It didn't happen. People had some fucking ethos back then. They had some morality. Usually, you get that more with multiple gods. I know I'm going to piss off a bunch of people saying that, but it's fucking true. If you look historically, right, especially with a little ditty we call the Catholic Church in its history, it wasn't exactly a fun time for non-believers. And then there was that time they took fan fiction and made it canon. Oh, Dante, you shitpost. But no, so, again, another aside. You learn all sorts of fun facts with the Warlock, Goth, and the Chris Monster. You learn all sorts of fun facts. But anyways, so the Bronze Age collapse had all of these events happen at the same time. I don't think we're in a fall of Rome situation in the modern day. I think we're in a repeat of the Bronze Age collapse. Mostly because the religion causing all the shit is still there causing all the shit. You know, so, fun fact, who still believes the same, the mother is the sole lineage bearer, essentially. The heritage of that religion bloodline. Again, I'm totally not narrowing it down because there's only one religion bloodline on the fucking planet, but, you know, anyways. That one demands that the mother be of that race. Religion. Both. God, fuck. Just, anyways. Yiddish. I think that word I'm allowed to say under the censorship guide of 2020 Gestalt. But, anyways. Yeah, fun facts. Where was I going with all this? Dude, this is what happens when I don't take my medicine. I forget things way more easily than forgetting things just by having opiate collagen deficit brain, you know, like, anyways, so, oh yeah, the different societies. Now, I think it was the Hittites specifically had a more, like, agrarian set of beliefs. They were more farmer gods and whatnot. They had a lot of the same gods as the other Middle Eastern empires of the time, but they focused more on their worship of farm and agriculture and things of that nature. So it's weird that they collapsed specifically. Like, when was the last time you've heard of the fucking Hittites, right? I ain't seen them around in a while, at least, right? So, they collapsed completely. Why is that? Well, as I alluded to earlier, the religion changed so badly, and it pissed off so many people, and they were treating their men like such garbage, that the farmers left. What happens when you have no farmers? Right, you're out of fucking food, bucko. That's what happens. You run out of food. If all the farmers in your country get killed or fuck off, you're out of food. Plain and simple. Right? Not a whole lot of Mickey D's in the Bronze Age, let me tell you. But, you know, they fucked off completely. Because the men were treated like unvaluable tools. Men don't ask for much. We are willing, biologically programmed, to build, to serve, to save, to love. We are biologically engineered for these things. All we ask in return is a fucking thank you once in a while. You know? I mean, hand jobs are nice on occasion, but all we really ask for is a thank you, and I love you, and thank you for knocking out this rent, father. That's all we ask. That's not hard. In the Bronze Age, they failed this, and it collapsed all of the known world. Well, except for Greece and North. A lot of Germania was still extremely loose-knit tribes. They weren't really much of a nation. The Nordlands had more nations, but they were more out in the boonies kind of thing. They were more wilderness and wild and untamed lands, and they were that even well into the Dark Age. When you start getting 850s or so, that's when the Nordlands started to colonize much better and spread their roots much thicker. Partly by invading the piss out of Britain, partly. I know several Bretonians of the modern day who are obviously of Nordic stock. Giant motherfuckers, blonde hair, blue eyes, right? Like, very obviously Nordic stock. Which actually, there was more redheads for a time in the Nordlands than there were blondes. Fun fact. There was that for a time. Not all the time, but for a time. And again, I've known quite a few Bretonians who are thick, muscle-bound jackhammers, and some of them work out, some of them not so much, but all of them are just built large. They're a Tonka tough people, and that's where you get into things like, I think physiognomy is the word. I think that's the word. You get into things like, oh hey, the Nords are taller and their legs are shaped a certain way, and their noses are a certain way, and that's true with every race on the planet, right? We are all built to our environment. The Nords can handle cold like a motherfucker, right? To a point where they don't even realize they're cold half the time. There's actually been quite a few cases I've read. One of a metal musician. I think he was like a black metal vocalist, which this is extremely fucking brutal. But he got drunk at a tavern. This was like in the last 20 years or so. He got drunk in a tavern and then walked out into the snow during a blizzard. And they found him frozen to death a week later. Like, perfectly preserved in ice. Like, see, again, one, alcohol warms you up, so you think you're warmer than you are. Two, you're a fucking Nord, so you're not gonna notice the cold in the first place. So that stacked on top of booze tends to make you don't even aware that you're freezing to death. So sometimes your resistance can be your undoing. Sometimes. Again, extreme circumstances, but still. Now, the Greeks were a very philosophical lot, as you will probably know by what little they teach you about the Bronze Age. And the board-mandated education centers. Really, they're camps, but that's beside the point. And they also have wooden doors. Anyways. Lol. But now, again, just you have different sets for different races. Now I can mention all the white ones, pros and cons, what they do good, what they do bad, and no one will have an ounce of an issue. But if I mention the protected caste, the dark and the hook, then all of a sudden I'm a racist, a bigot, or whatever buzzword they invented in the last 20 minutes. And I can't talk about this science is heresy, burn it down, we believe in the one true faith. Which totally isn't in Helative. I wonder how much of our money we're going to give them this time. But no, God, this is going to get so banned. I love it. But anyways, if it's banned off YouTube, I'll just post it some fucking place else. I don't give a shit. That's a cat butt. Okay. What the hell is touching me? Oh, it's Dottie's tail. Okay. Oh, hey, Dot. There you are. Sorry, my cat wanted to say hello. Well, one of my cats. This one's a rescue. We had to save her from a very bitter winter. And we've just been taking care of her ever since. She's well behaved. Hops a lot. Like, she thinks she's a rabbit, I swear. But anyways, getting off topic again. So yeah. The Bronze Age collapse had all these different things going on. And all these different fun little events. Now, when it comes to religion, it does a few things. One, it sets you to believe very specific tenets and codes and creeds and edifices, I guess. It has you set in certain ways. Anyone in the modern day can notice this by how religious the boomers are. Will you stop messaging me? How religious the boomers are. I don't know how to turn that off. Anyways, you can tell by looking at them, vast majority of them are still steeped in religion, right? Millennials and Gen Z, not so much. Actually, millennials were kind of the, hey, we're all atheists, Zomgamur kind of, generation. God, the poor millennials, those poor bastards. Again, well, I am one, but still. What did you motherfucker? Okay. Wrong time to be popular, Chris. Actually, let me check to see my... 30 minutes, okay. Huh. I'm at the end. I ain't restarting it. Yeah, no. Brief intervention. Untermensch. Brief Untermensch alert. Yeah, no. Ale says hi, by the way. So yeah, I this is the very end of the video. This is where I wanted to end it, and we're already 30 minutes and I'm not redoing the damn thing. Just, anyways. Tangent aside. Still, fun times. Now again, I will... I can't line that up for biscuits. Okay. Kind of circumcise the damn thing. Alright, well... also, fun fact, circumcision was a practice that started towards the end of the Bronze Age. Now, when it comes to monotheism, specifically of the Brothers Three, everyone wants to pretend that the stories are much older than they are. In reality, they date to late Bronze Age. Right? At least the most wealthiest and handsome of the three brothers, wink wink, started in this time period, as I mentioned before. The dumb, deaf, and blind kid middle brother more so kicked off towards when BC became AD. BC, I believe, is before Christ, and AD is not after death. It's Anno Domini, which is the year of our Lord in Latin. That's actually what it is. So, when AD became a thing, all of a sudden, we have a new kid on the block who, at first, meant well, and then his evil stepbrother, the Catholic Church, kicks into high gear and takes all the things that the Messiah, I guess is the word, said, and flip it into statist reform. The Catholic Church was the original oligarchical state, and they spanned all throughout Europe at one point. They were the largest empire state on the planet. They were the closest thing we've ever had to, well, aside from the modern attempt, to a one-world government, was the Catholic Church. That was the closest thing we had to that in history. Because they owned so much fucking land, and they expanded more than Rome ever did. The Catholic Church owned more land and more wealth than Rome ever did. And that was just in a 100-year time span. So, again, we talk about all these tyrannical states of the past, especially in the 20th century, but we don't seem to go much farther back than that. Now, with the third disciple, which only comes out at about 500 to 1000 AD. I think 580. Islam. That name I can say aloud. They started about 500-ish AD, maybe 300, a couple hundred years plus or minus or so after the year of our Lord began. And they've been stuck in the Bronze Age, even though they were formed long after the Bronze Age. Fun fact. And that's why they're kind of the middle of the chess piece right now, because but here's what's strange. Everyone thinks the Middle East now is this den of patriarchal oppression, but if you actually look at a lot of the way the legal practices are carried out and a lot of the way the crime and punishment is carried out, it's much harsher on men. For example, if a female child is savagely ganged by an adult, the adult is put to death, the child is not. If and this does fucking happen, if a boy is savaged by an adult man, they are both put to death in the Middle East. Both of them. Okay? It's literally blame the victim with a death penalty. If feminists gave a fuck about the blame the victim concept, then they would be targeting that first. But they don't. They only care about these concepts when it applies to the fucking holy vagina demon. God, there's gonna be porn of that. Oh, jeez. Anyways, again, off track. I'm talking about all these things because it relates to the Bronze Age. And it relates to a lot of the situations that happened towards its collapse. And I'm talking about it because a lot of this stuff is still going on today. And I think we're more in the Bronze Age collapse. And I say that because we are due for another polar shift ice age bullshit thing like they had at this time period. We are due for that. It happens every 3,600 years. 1200 BC was 3,600 years ago, for those who, well, roughly, less than, but still. Yeah, fun, damn buttons, fun time. It's very much something we are due for. Again, man-made is not in the fucking equation in the Bronze Age. Man-made climate control, change, manipulation bullshit wasn't a fucking thing back then. They didn't even have fucking aerosol spray and shit. Let alone a fucking oil spewing, gas guzzling hybrid 4x4. They didn't have that in the Bronze Age, but they had a massive climate shift. The poles got fucked up beside each other so badly that the climate died. The farmer said, fuck it, you're not treating us with dignity. They left for greener pastures, and then all of society collapsed. Because it also got raided at the exact same time, because in other places, their climate was suffering, so they decided to invade the places where climate weren't suffering as much, i.e. the desert. It's not as cold in the desert, even when the ice caps are doing the horizontal mambo. Right? That's not what's going on at the time. So, again, all that fun shit and fun times ahoy. So we're due for another polar mambo. Also, the overthrowing of the old guard in terms of religion has happened since the 60s and is still happening today. Not a whole lot of, people believing in... But look, America was discovered by white Christians. Oh, well, white, not just Christians, but a mix of, things. But a lot of them were white Christians. A good chunk of them were white Christians. Now, in terms of percentage, way less people are are white Christians in America. Way less people. Right? And I'm not saying Christianity's the one true path. You know I don't fucking believe that. But if a society has a agreed upon ethos, a agreed upon metric, it tends to do better. It tends to thrive better. We all throughout America's history, we let in migrants. Actually, we basically begged migrants to come in certain periods. We would, like, if we needed farmers, if we had a bunch of agricultural land with little farmers, then we would petition very agrarian societies like Russia and the Slavlands and all this other stuff to send us their farmers, and we'd do that for a couple of years. Then we'd stop migrants almost completely. We would severely limit people coming into the country. Severely limit. Right? And then we'd open it back up. And we did that off and on since 1776. So, again, that was our kind of migrant welcoming thing. Why did I mention migrants? Gee, let me guess. Have you seen Europe right now? Have you seen that Bronze Age collapse waiting to happen? Their invasions have already happened. They were let in the front fucking door. And they're destroying the holy statues and sodomizing the housemaid. And you wonder why I say the Bronze Age collapse is happening again. Invasions have happened. The polar ice shift is happening. Because it just keeps getting hotter and colder. That's what happens leading up to this event. And the overthrowing of religion has already happened. Now all that's left is for the men of our society to say, fuck it, I'm out. And we 100% have all the recipe needed for the Bronze Age collapse. That's all we need left. Is for our men to say, you don't value me, fuck you, I'm leaving. Which, oh boy, will that destroy some supply lines? Will that send us back a couple hundred years, right? Again, that's the only ingredient we don't currently have in the modern day that we had in the Bronze Age. The only one is for men to say, fuck it, let's go. Now, that can end in one of three ways. Either A, the men revolt and overthrow the dictators and establish a new order. B, the men fuck off to greener pastures or just stop working. And C, our men get conquered by other men. Now, C seems unlikely, but China's always a threat, so you never know. And the other two, well, we'll see. But yeah, that's again, this has been a long-form explanation, but there you go. This is why I think we are into the Bronze Age collapse again. Fun fact, the main culprit of the orchestrator of the religious upheaval is still doing it, and has done it ever since. So Kanye, how's that big-tittied man-face thing you got now? Is that kept you placated and stopped talking about you-know-who? How's that working out for you? How's those meds you're back on working out for you, Kanye? You were such a hope, man. I'm glad you're happy now. In a medicated, comatose state with some chick with fake tits. Bravo, Kanye, bravo. You were the standard bearer of a tradition long past. And now you just quit because they gave you the right drugs. I was on similar drugs, but I got off them. And I'm a chronic pain patient, and I got off opiates. If I can do it, Kanye, you can too. Believe me, it's true, my friend. It is true. Also, what the fuck is Yi? What? That's not a name. That's a grunt. Anyways, that was an aside, but still, my videos are nothing but asides. This is what you people pay me for. But anyways, so yeah, that's essentially the Bronze Age collapse. What led up to it? How it's happening again? I'd say who to blame, but Apparently, that's a hate crime because of who owns this place. And in other fun news, for people wanting to respond to my videos, you might not want to. It might get your shit banned. you might not want to include the things I say in your public discourse. I'm basically going full Jermaine Travis? No. What's his name? God, what's that British comedian who has like a dumb French name? Ricky Gervais. I'm basically going full Ricky Gervais, but for YouTube. You know, I don't care what happens. Fuck you, people. I'm telling the truth. That's basically what I'm doing. So, fun fact. But yeah, that was essentially it. The collapse, what led up to it, how it happened, how it's happening again. How to fix it. Worship your men again. Go back to your old faiths. Go back to a shared upon ethos. It will inoculate you from the storm. I don't think I said that word right, but here I am trying. but still, just resist is all you can do. And don't die. And please have children. That's another way to prevent this. Have kids. Get off the porn. Get off the multi-headed dildos. Go back to having families and being happy and not hitting the wall at 35 because your eggs are drying up, Taryn. Go back to that. You'll be happier. Society will be happier. We won't collapse. Because when America's gone, that will be a fall of Rome situation. The world is in a Bronze Age collapse situation. The America falling and then a Dark Age happening. On one hand, I want to say the internet will prevent a Dark Age, but let's be real. Most of the best memes and news comes from America. So the internet will miss us. Especially the memes. We make good memes. But anyways. So yeah, that was it. I'll do my standard outro. Any fucking questions, comment them, the thing. I'm not gonna say the standard YouTube outro thing, because I hate that shit. So, goodbye, good luck, get fucked, have kids, take it easy. And, the Untermensch. Bye.